20 years after the release of the iconic film, a brand new take on Mean Girls bursts onto the scene this weekend. An adaptation of the Tony-nominated musical, we're reintroduced to familiar characters in a different light. Does this film come together in perfect harmony, or will you leave the theater on a sour note?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MontyVerse. We just checked out Mean Girls, and boy, do we want to talk about it.
Do we ever? I think we both have some pretty strong opinions regarding this film, and it's one that I went into, even though I'm very familiar with both the original movie and the Broadway musical, I wasn't sure what to expect, honestly.
Yeah, I conduct a little experiment. You're very familiar with both those properties. I've watched Mean Girls a bunch of times. It was definitely a huge movie as I was growing up, but I made it a point not to rewatch the movie within the past year, knowing this movie was coming out. And I made it a point not to familiarize myself with the Broadway musical, so I wanted to go in this and experience it from a very blank slate. And I have to say, I quite enjoyed this film. It was surprisingly delightful.
This, honestly, I know it's only the second week of the year. This may be the biggest shock of the year already.
Of the year already, absolutely of the year already. I could definitely feel safe in saying that, because this movie, I feel like, fumbled the bag so hard when it came to its marketing plan.
Absolutely. It's so confusing the way it approached it, because I know a lot of the prevailing theory is studios are afraid to advertise musical movies as musicals, and I think that was true for this one.
Because some focus group decided that people don't like musicals. I love musicals. Do we forget how much money The Greatest Showman made? That made a lot of money.
I think the thing that everyone's forgetting is we like good musicals. Yeah. It's not about the fact that it's a musical. It's like the superhero movie fatigue thing. We just want it to be good.
We just want high quality films. And
yes.
This is a very fun film, and I found it so weird because I'm sitting there watching this movie and I'm like, why did they not advertise this? Why is this not the trailer? Why is this not in the marketing?
I was gonna say, I don't want to delve too much into the marketing, but I think it was definitely mismarketed. The things that they showed, I think, weren't very well representative of the final product, and I think it really was a missed opportunity in terms of the jokes they could have used, or even just some bits of the songs. It's very weird. Yeah,
and I only brought up the marketing because that's me saying that they marketed this film and people thought it was going to be a rehash of the original.
Yeah.
But what it actually was a surprisingly unique spin on this story, and one that I feel like definitely deserves to exist on its own and be compared to the original movie. I think this has a voice outside of what the original movie stood for.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's so interesting about our perspectives. You know the movie on a more casual level. I know the movie like the back of my hand. I haven't watched it in probably over a year, and it wouldn't make a difference. I know it just as well if I watch it again. And I'm pretty familiar with the Broadway musical. I never saw it, but when that soundtrack came out, I listened to it on repeat. I've seen a lot of clips of it. And watching it from that perspective, it is crazy how much of this film really has kind of its own tone and identity, independent of both of those preceding works.
Yeah, I mean, when this movie was first announced, I was so worried because we've watched, as fans of both musicals and movies, we have watched so many Broadway musical adaptations, movie adaptations, and they, for the most part, like 95% of them are absolutely terrible. Terrible direction. They don't know how to film choreography or singing. This movie has none of those problems, which is absolutely surprising.
Oh my goodness. I honestly completely agree with that. I mean, there's so much we could delve into, but just off the bat, the direction for this film is unbelievably good.
Yeah, in a film that has a tremendously talented cast, and there's a lot of standout performances, the biggest standout performance has to be by the two directors of this movie, because they do some incredible shots in this film that make these musical montages and musical set pieces come to life in ways that I wasn't fully expecting when I was in the theater.
Absolutely. I think the little bit of the benefit of it is it's still a relatively grounded story. There's not like it's mostly at school, obviously.
Yeah.
There's not like these insane over-the-top sets or they have to do crazy special effects. But, honestly, there's some individual shots that I can just point out that are just shot so cleanly. It's an interesting angle that they decide to go with. And when they have the numbers, they really take advantage of the film medium.
Yeah, and they being Samantha Jane and Arturo Perez Jr., who surprisingly, outside of TV episodes and music, like some musical documentaries. This is their first major motion picture, I believe, and they knocked this out of the park. I think they did such a fantastic job of directing this film. They create this world that is contrasting hyper-realistic high school life and aesthetics. Like some of the lunchroom in this feels so much more like a real high school lunchroom than I feel like the movie version did. And they intercut that with these bold, pop-inspired musical set pieces that really contrast so well with each other.
Really, and something that is a huge thing for me when it comes to adaptations are, what is so impressive about the stage in general is the fact that you do all of that live with no, like, you can't do multiple takes. You have to get everything right on the spot. So with film, you have so much more freedom to, like, really elevate things you can't do on stage. And I appreciate that they took advantage of that, especially with some of these musical numbers, with transitions, with some set designs, with just so much that they really added to it.
Yeah, because the argument can be made, why does this exist? If we want the movie, we have the movie. If we want the musical exists. I think this film does a great job of saying, like, we're going to take the best of both of those worlds and combine them into something that utilizes the cinematic medium so well. They do stuff in this film that musicals can't do. Like you said, it's impossible for musicals to pull off some of the shots that this movie does. So it very much utilizes the cinematic landscape to its advantage in really fun and unique ways.
Absolutely. And then honestly, just kind of going into more of the production of it, the songs.
I had a lot of fun with the songs.
There's the part of me that wants to really acknowledge the achievement of this film, and it's also at odds with my knowledge and appreciation of the stage musical, because for those who aren't familiar with the stage musical, they did cut not so many, but quite a few songs from the musical. And not only that, they changed some of the musical arrangement on a lot of them to sound more poppy and less Broadway, show-stopping. And I think, honestly, I'm surprised by how well it worked.
Yeah, I think this film works because the music speaks to a younger generation. It speaks to the generation that is kind of going through this now, that's in high school. And even if you're not, you could still kind of resonate with the music. But, of course, lyrically. But I think the production of the music itself is done to really cater to that younger audience. And this is their Mean Girls. This is not your mama's Mean Girls, as the trailer said. This is definitely one that speaks to this generation and through the music, and I really like that.
I went in knowing that was going to be the case, very skeptical, almost wondering if it was going to be pandering to the younger audience. But honestly, for the tone they're trying to strike with this movie and some of the themes, I think most of them do work very shockingly well on me.
Yeah.
And I'll admit I have a little bit of bias because I do like some of the original songs. But honestly, I think for the most part, they serve very well. There's a couple deliberate uses of auto-tune that I think maybe are a little bit jarring. But other than that, I do actually find it very impressive how they redid these songs, basically.
Let's talk cast, because you can't have songs without people singing them.
Absolutely.
And there are some major standouts in this cast. I think the cast overall is really solid, but I think I have two standouts. So I think my first standout has to be Renee Rapp as Regina George. I think she introduces us to a new version of this very iconic character that was originally portrayed by Rachel McAdams.
Oh, yeah.
And she has tremendous shoes to fill by playing this role.
Absolutely.
Taking on this role. And she crafts a much more, I think, sinister at times Regina. The lighting does a great job of capturing the curvatures of her face and creating these very sinister, almost like Disney villain-esque like shots and scenes. And she does a really great job of using her face and acting with her face to create like almost like Bill Skarsgård levels, Pennywise levels of like facial contortion in some scenes. And I really love what she did with the character, not to mention her phenomenal vocal range. Jeez Louise.
Oh, absolutely. And real quick, just another Broadway lesson for those who aren't familiar. She did actually play Regina on Broadway. She was the replacement for the original actress Taylor Louderman. And I remember when she was announced and I was like, oh, cool, this unknown. Oh, she's 19 years old at the time she was in the show, which is wild. And yes, this 19-year-old playing 8 shows a week in this vocally demanding role. And she was insane. Like, they released clips of her. Like, they knew that they had gold on their hands
and
with
gold
her.
They have, because she ate in this movie.
She ate. And that's what I find super impressive as well, is for people who are on stage, you have to be very over the top and expressive. But she was, like, perfect from that transition from the stage to the screen without being too over the top, but still very much living in the character of Regina.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shared dialogue between her and Rachel McAdams' version of the character, but I feel like they're two very different characters.
Absolutely. No, I think she definitely, because you're talking a little bit about how sinister she is. I think what makes her so great and unique is she comes off like she's a bit more forward in how sinister she is, but she's also still very conniving when she needs to be.
She has a presence. She has such a presence. Her presence envelops every scene she's in. It's like she just devours the screen whenever she's on it. It's crazy that, again, this is a very iconic cinematic character. This is like the transition between Bonds. This is her interpretation of James Bond, aka Regina George. And I think she does a really, really good job of keeping it familiar enough for us to recognize the character, but giving us her own spin on it, which I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Honestly, similar to Renee, because I know of her experience with Broadway, my other standout is another Broadway star, and it is Shaquille Spivey as Damien.
Yes, that's who I was going to say.
And honestly, he is a freaking hoot. To my knowledge, he was the lead performer in A Strange Loop, which was last year's Tony winner for Best New Musical. And honestly, he did not disappoint.
His timing is fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
So good. He has such a comedic timing to him that even some of the jokes, which is what kind of lowered this movie a little bit for me, there's a lot of repeated jokes because while a lot of the dialogue is new, there is a new dialogue and the singing helps to differentiate it from the original movie. There are some jokes that are too iconic to omit from this movie. And I think even though they don't really land for me a large majority of the time because I could see them coming, they're telegraphed. So when jokes are telegraphed, they're not nearly as funny.
Yeah.
But he does a great job of, for the ones that he has to deliver, making me laugh because he has a really good comedic timing to him.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just rinse and repeat the same exact thing that you heard before. He definitely helps to put his own unique spin on a lot of the dialogue, which I loved.
Absolutely. No. And I think he really differentiates himself from the previous performers I've watched as Damien, either both in the original movie or the ones who are on the Broadway soundtrack. Honestly, like you said, great comedic timing, great delivery, and I do think he really does differentiate it.
Yeah, and I think the third biggest standout is Janice. Do you know the actress's name who plays Janice?
Moana herself, Aulii Cravalho.
She's so good. That's Moana?
I can't believe I didn't tell you that.
I didn't recognize her at all. Because she wears a lot of like makeup and hair dye and jewelry on her face. Good for her. She killed it.
Oh, yeah. And
Go Moana.
I was going to say, I don't want to like just pigeonhole her as Moana because I know she's also done a lot of other work since then. But no, I was so thrilled when I heard her cast announcement for this.
Yeah, she's fantastic because the movie really is told more or less through Janice's perspective.
Yeah, and that is something that does carry over a little bit from the musical in terms of a framing device they use.
Which I loved. I loved seeing it. It gives a new light to the movie. So you go in expecting one thing and you get this and I'm not disappointed. And her vocals are so ridiculously strong.
Oh my gosh, yes. Which again, went into this knowing that would be the case. But what I really love about her version of Janice, and I will say this, and all the respect in the world to all previous actors who have performed as Janice, she might be my favorite, like pretty damn easily. And I think what the movie does is not only is her performance great, they also give her a little more to work with in terms of her relationships with other characters and developing her background a bit and in different ways from the previous versions. And I think that really supports the character a lot.
It's a strong performance, not only musically, but also she does a really good acting performance in this film as well. Janice has a lot of very emotionally intense scenes, and I think she does a great job of conveying those harder and intense emotions as she's kind of our surrogate through this story. And it's really was wonderful to watch. I really love that new perspective and that new spin on this familiar tale.
Absolutely. And also just one other quick standout for me, definitely not as large of a role, but one in which I could not believe how perfect this casting was. And I knew it was going to be, but she delivered, is Busy Phillips as Mrs. George.
Busy Phillips steals every scene that she's in. Ridiculous. That's inspired casting.
It's inspired. It's insane because this kind of character on paper would be the most annoying.
Yeah.
But holy hell, does she deliver everything with so much earnestness and over the top, but in service to this character.
It's crazy to follow Amy Poehler.
Yes.
But she does. And she somehow I think does it better. I think she out-polars Polar.
I think there's potential, like, for that argument. Which I never would have thought anything in this movie would be better than any other version, but man.
Yeah, it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to give props to Tina Fey.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much as a performer. Her performance is pretty much the same as it was in the movie version in this. Not really much to go off of there because it's a small role.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to give props to her as a writer because I think she does a really good job of modernizing this script.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels very much, it's very easy to reboot a movie franchise or a movie, especially one that came out 20 years ago, and fall into the tropes of just doing the same movie over again.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do that here. And I think she modernizes a lot of the humor. She modernizes, and she finds a voice for the modern generation, which I think is really interesting and really fun to see her kind of find that voice again for a different generation of teenagers. It's pretty incredible in terms of like what she's able to do. And is the script perfect? No, but is it good? It's pretty darn good.
It is pretty darn good. And I can speak, like I said, to, in terms of the movie and the musical differences, and this was something that I think was also weirdly not present in the marketing, was whether or not it was going to closely follow one or the other. Because the musical is very similar to the movie, but had its own original jokes. And I love the fact that this movie had jokes unique to both of them.
Yeah.
But also, and more importantly, it had its own unique jokes to it. It had its own unique presentations of certain scenes that are familiar. But like you said, I think it's very in tune with the times without, for the most part, being insufferably so.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But Nicki, out of 5 burn books, what did you think of Mean Girls 2023?
Oh, man. I mean, like I said, I think I have a little issue with some of the song changes and some of the jokes, but overall, I'm so pleasantly surprised by this. This is one of the stronger movie musical adaptations I've recently seen. I'm going to give this a solid 3.5 out of 5 burn books.
Whoa, that's high praise. That's high praise. I had a lot of fun with this. This is a very fun movie. It's tough because I really liked it, but I don't think I could in good conscience give this a 4 because there is a lot of retreading. As much as I want to. I want to give this a 4 so bad because I loved it and I had so much fun with it. But there was some stuff that I felt didn't really work at times. So I will be giving it a positive score. It will be getting 3.5 burn books out of 5. Because I really did have fun with this, guys. And we really do. I mean, I do anyway. I recommend that you check this movie out because for a January release, this is a really good time at the movies.
Absolutely. And what's so crazy is this was originally supposed to be straight to streaming and then got a theatrical release. And I feel like that really should have given us more faith in this because clearly someone saw something in it.
Yeah, definitely. It's weird. But anyway, go see it because it's also good. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest content. If you want to check out our other reviews and reactions, click the link on the page. Until next time, guys, stay versed.